fix your approach. The approach gotta be more gorilla on it.
Motown, the Beatles, surf music. I mean, I grew up with everything. In LA, in Los Angeles, where I grew up in East LA, well, you heard what was on the radio, and everything was on the radio. You could hear from Motown to surf music to the Beatles to just about everything you could possibly think of. And that's what we grew up on, and that's basically what I was influenced by.
I listened to music when I was a kid. My mother played Mexican music in the house. I listened to a lot of Motown and R&B when I was a kid, and discovered rock and roll and
the only thing I can think of
Ray
is
Charles, because that was pretty rocking, as far as I was concerned. And discovered bands like Grateful Dead and Fairport Convention, which was Rich Thompson's first band. On and on.
Well, the cultural thing that was in East LA at the time when I was growing up, it was Mexican community, the food, of course, the food, the cultural things that were going around. There was a lot of things that were kind of not. I mean, we had hard times with the police. We had those kinds of things. But see, I grew up in a very strong community where both sides of my family were from one area. And it was a pretty strong community. We had a lot of my family grew up together, so we were a very close-knit family.
Okay.
And it really kind of, my mom was very religious, and that those are some of the things that she kind of, I guess, kind of basically raised me on. Kind of stuck with me as far as my growing up and so on, and a lot of those things were implanted in me, and a lot of those things I still feel today. But it's community, culture, and religion, I guess you could say.
I've been traveling around the United States for the past 25 years. Just kids from East LA. We never went anywhere, and we discovered America. And back in like 1983, there was very few Mexicans or Mexican Americans in like Richmond, Virginia, or Minneapolis, and now, the face of America has changed, and that face is brown. And as far as what's going on politically right now, the question of immigration, I think, has been sidelined because of the economy, which affects all of us, all Americans, whether they be Japanese Americans or African Americans or Mexican Americans. But we're still have a long way to go on the immigration issue. I support Barack Obama because it's more than just sloganizing. It does represent change. For an African American person to get this far and possibly could become president of the United States with the help of all of us, I think what he represents is something that's very powerful as a symbol to the rest of the world. A very inclusive America. The holes they're trying to shoot into this campaign is that he lacks experience. But I have not heard anyone in years and years since John F. Kennedy made that speech that it's up to us to change America. Barack Obama said, look I want you to tell me, and I will make sure that change happens. And I haven't heard that in a long time. That's why I support him. Because he's a person of color, I think he's sensitive to the needs of the multicultural community throughout the United States. But at the same time, I have to stress, without ignoring America as a whole, and without America unifying, I don't think we can progress as a nation and as a world leader. And with the help of the Latin community in the United States, to support him, I think there certainly can be change. guess when we loaded up the van and left East LA.
Okay.
And we went across the LA River and played at the time, this was like in the late 70s, early 80s, and playing the punk rock clubs.
Okay.
It was kind of unusual for a Mexican-American band to be in that scene.
Hey Mondo, just
That was
checking
one.
in. Everything okay?
And the
Good.
second time was we loaded up the van again,
To do something.
and we drove across America for the first time.
Okay.
And that was an inspiring thing.
It's looking like a really
Okay.
good house.
We discovered America.
And a fun house.
We
They're
discovered
really
America
excited.
with all its pimples and wrinkles, and Steinbeck said in one of his books, the things that make you swell with pride, and the things that break your heart.
Well, you know, music has taken us to a lot of different places. We've met a lot of our heroes. We've met a lot of very interesting political people. We did a tribute album, not a tribute album, but a fundraising album for the United Farm Workers of America. And basically, it was for Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez was part of he was the leader of that movement, and we became friends. And that was one of the most influential things that happened early on in our careers.
Probably the first one would be when my mom went to it, took out a loan, financed a guitar for me, you know, which is nice. The Sears catalog, you know, look at the guitars. She goes, well, I can't afford that, but if you want to wait a little while, maybe I can get you something better. So I waited about a year, and then she bought me a Gibson guitar. Bottom of the, low end, but the kind, you know.
There was one show where the Lobos opened for this band that I was in called the Blasters, and it was one of those, like, the guys had been together at that point like 7 years, but no one had ever heard of them. They had, you know, there's a line in Los Angeles, there's actually a river that has no water in it, but it's called the river. And, you know, these guys had basically never crossed it, and all these, you know, smarty pants, intellectual LA, you know, geniuses had never, you know, experienced, including myself, had never heard anything about Los Lobos, and so they came and opened for the Blasters, and it was like literally like the next day, that's all anybody was talking about was, did you see this band? You know, where the hell they come from? Who the fuck are these guys? You know, what's the story? Because there was just, they were so unique in the scene. And, you know, we became friends first, and then they said to me, you know, do you want to learn some of these songs? And at that moment, I had no idea the tradition of the saxophone and its music and a lot of the Norteño music and stuff like that. So I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And just, you know, gradually, song by song and show by show and concert by concert, we became, you know, just sort of like my participation became greater and greater and greater until, you know, one day basically I was in the band. It was just this kind of very organic process where, you know, I was kind of like moving from one band to another, and then I think it was our first tour that Lobos did out of the country was to Norway just prior to the first EP coming out, and that was like the first time I was like, you know, by that point I was officially in the band, and we went to Norway in the middle of January. It was colder than, it was just unbelievable, but it was a great experience. We had a really good time, and till this day we laugh about it. We still see people that we met on that tour.
Of course, later on, we played for President Clinton. We played for a lot of political figures, you know, people in California that were highly up there in the political realm of things. But we've also done a lot of things with other bands. We played for a lot of our heroes, like I said, I met George Harrison, Eric Clapton, and a lot of these folks that we kind of grew up listening to. So those are all pivotal times or moments in our career.
It's your approach. The approach gotta be more gorilla on it.